Great. Thank you very much, Helen, and welcome everyone tonight to our training session in Focus Learning, Toy Safety and Maintenance. So tonight, thank you everyone who's popped their traditional place name in the chat. We acknowledge the traditional owners on whose land we gather and play. For me, that's the Wadawurrung people of the Kulin Nation. And for Helen, that's the Kurrama people of the Eastern Guruma. So we pay our respects to their elders past and present and to the children who are the leaders of tomorrow. We also extend our respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people from all nations on this land who are here today. This was and always will be their land. Tonight, we also acknowledge that play is for everyone. So I'd like to acknowledge all the people we have here today. I recognise all of the different qualities and unique abilities all of us bring to this space. What we each offer is valuable to one another and to our community as a whole. So today we're going to cover operations, so looking at maintenance, warnings and packaging. We're going to talk about assessment and repair. I'm going to talk about the role that toy buying plays in all of this. I'm going to talk about risk management. We'll go through some insurance consideration and the toy standards. And then we've got a bit of a cool toy safety standards tool to show you right at the very end how to bring all of this together. So let's kick off with talking about operations. Let's talk about what processes you should have in place within your operations that put safety in the spotlight at your toy library. So firstly, routine maintenance. Make sure that you build routine maintenance into your returns and checking processes. Or are you simply counting pieces? So having a checklist for those volunteers completing that task, whether they're looking for loose parts or sharp edges, even removing batteries from toys can lead to looking for corrosion or leakage or loose compartments, and then also checking for signs of wear, damage, and checking cords for fraying. How you communicate these processes with your volunteers is key to building their confidence in identifying potential problems and either solving them or referring them. Clear documentation about toy checking expectations should be in place. If you want to see a great example, check out the volunteer guide developed by the Ballarat Toy Library as part of the recent SARC project. You can contact Ella or Kate via email directly if you'd like a copy of that. So the next part of your operations, and this can be a bit of a contentious question for some toy libraries, is stock take. So to stock take or not? Firstly, you need to consider what the purpose of conducting a stock take is for your toy library. Is it that conducting toy maintenance, or is it simply making sure that you have every toy in the toy library and it's reuniting missing pieces? There are a number of schools of thought on the topic of stock take. So the first one is if your routine maintenance practices are robust and the toys are generally seeing really good rotation throughout the collection, a typical stock take where all toys are brought back into the collection and worked through may actually not be necessary in your toy library, because that means that you are capturing all of those important pieces at the time that they occur. The second school of thought is that volunteer capacity within your sessions might be limited, and problem solving on the fly just isn't working for you. So your annual stock take then becomes more of a busy bee that looks at both toy function, safety, and wear and tear. It takes into consideration toy popularity, and then it also addresses any missing parts and cleaning issues that the collection might have. Your other options that you have for stock take are a rolling stock take, which can be conducted by extra volunteers within your sessions, or you can do that through at-home duties by sending portions of the collection home with members to conduct a stock take. All of those will require solid documentation on exactly what you, your committee, your team are looking for when you're asking your members and your volunteers to assess toys for all of those different areas that we're talking about. And then the third important part to the process setup is making sure that you have good cataloguing procedures. So when you bring new toys into the toy library, ensuring that you're capturing all of the warning information from the original packaging within your index card or within the toy notes or alerts as relevant within your system. And we'll talk a little bit about warning labels shortly. Make use of the instructions upload in both Settles and MyBase to capture that original documentation. It can be invaluable down the track, and we all know that storage is a premium within toy libraries. So your alerts that you might include might relate to specific care instructions for the toy, i.e. don't get wet or leave outside. It might refer to weight restrictions. It's worth noting that for secondhand and donated toys, you may not obviously have that level of information available to you. So you need to do your due diligence on those toys, noting if donation is the reason for a lack of information around that toy. But don't be afraid to use the technology tools available to you to find out as much as possible. We all love a good Google, and have a look at, use reverse image searches to see if you can find out more about it. Find out whether there were original warnings with the toy, whether the toy is complete, and whether it is complete as it was when it was originally sold. Okay, on to hazards. So the nature of toy library operations combined with children means that we have to be extra vigilant in communicating warnings to parents. So some of the key hazards that you may come across within a toy library are choking, particularly in toys for children under 36 months. It's essential that you communicate that small parts warning to members. And then you've also got pull along toys. Jumping back briefly to small parts, something you also need to be conscious of is not just in the toys going home with your members, but also around the toy library space generally. If you do have toys with small parts within your library, make sure that your volunteers are vigilant in visually sweeping the toy library throughout the sessions to identify any parts that might have gone astray throughout the session, fallen out of bags. It's keeping your missing parts up to date, but also it's being very aware of that potential for choking hazards amongst children who are within your toy library space. So pull along toys, toys with cords and fidget toys all pose a risk of strangulation as well. The next hazard is a big one, and this caused a lot of discussion in our earlier session today. So magnets is another key hazard. High-powered magnets, you should note, so small high-powered magnets are completely banned in Australia. So you can see at the bottom there an example of a high-powered magnet toy that was recalled as part of the ban. So if you have access to the specifications for the toy, if it's a new toy, look for neodymium, which is a metal, as the content of the magnet to indicate a high-powered magnet. Normal magnets might be indicated as ferrite. If you want to test existing magnets, you would need a Gauss meter, which is used to detect magnetic flux. You could try a MENSHED, and you could put a call out amongst your membership for electricians, as they will often have this within their toolkit. I will just drop in the chat there for you some further reading, which is a little bit scary about the damage that high-powered magnets can actually do. So important that you do keep a note, and if there's anything that you suspect within your toy library, please either test or just remove. So all other small magnets or all other magnets need visible warnings with the toy. Batteries is our last major hazard that we see in toy libraries. So there has been a significant rise in incidents involving lithium-ion batteries, and they tend to self-combust in homes. You will have seen that tied particularly to e-scooters and e-bikes as a major source of those. So toys with a rechargeable battery are likely to contain a lithium-ion battery if they were purchased after 2010. So that is something to be cautious of within your toy library. Lead-acid batteries are typically found in electric ride-ons. The biggest hazard in these is a breakdown as the battery gets older. Toy libraries with these types of write-ons must identify them to TLA as high-risk toys if you hold insurance through us. And the identification of toys with button or coin batteries or small magnets is not always easy for toy libraries, but check the manufacturer guidelines, and it could involve chasing down the manual if it's been a donated toy. You should be aware many toy manufacturers are phasing out button batteries in Australia, but they still exist and they can be very hard to find. They must be secured with a screw-in fastening to be compliant in Australia. But we certainly recommend toy libraries consider very carefully whether they do have them in their collection. All right. So warning labels, I'm sure everyone has seen warning labels and aware of them. Both Settles and MyBase can be configured to print warning labels on your index card, and you should work with the providers to make sure that all of the warnings that you need are set up and able to be automatically put on your index cards. It is the easiest way to make sure that they're not missed in future reprints of or changes of packaging for a toy. You need to ensure that you accurately record all warning information that comes with the original toy. So for secondhand toys, as we said, you should attempt to source this information from manufacturer websites if possible. If a toy doesn't come with an index card, the warning would be stuck on the toy itself. So for instance, a single piece 0 to 36 month toy that requires batteries should have that warning label stuck on the toy itself. So think activity tables as an example of that. There should still be a warning that goes with the toy. There is available in the knowledge base some templates for you to print your own stickers of warning labels if you do need to do so. If either you don't have access to the MyBase or Settles warnings, or if you would like to print your own stickers to put on those single piece toys. Okay. Packaging and bags. So what messaging do you give your members when they take toys home? Do you have that conversation with them about storing bags and boxes separately to where the toys are being played with? Do you have marked on that packaging that it's not a toy? So Rayco bags and other plastic bags pose a suffocation risk. A simple hole punch in several locations within the bag will mitigate this risk. You should carefully assess your boxes as they come back through returns and also when you're purchasing to make sure that they don't have any sharp edges and that you exercise caution around where there might be pinch points with those boxes with hinges and lids, etc. Other types of packaging that we see, drawstring bags. These pose a strangulation risk. And you should include a warning that the bag is not a toy, which should be attached to the bag itself. If it is printed on the index card and that index card is attached to the bag, that is sufficient notification for that, but it does pose a significant strangulation risk because it's obviously not regulated in the same way that toys are, which we'll go on to soon. We frequently see in toy libraries hand-sewn bags because we have some amazing volunteers in our community and they are reasonably risk-free, but you should check for loose threads, which could pose a choking hazard, and long looped handles can pose a strangulation risk as well. You should ensure that you're using ties, zips or Velcro as closures rather than buttons or press studs, which can come loose in the home and pose a choking hazard. Right, assessment and repair. So that we know toy libraries love to hang on to their golden oldies. They simply just don't make toys like they used to, but the standards have clearly changed over the years. So when we're looking at old and vintage toys, you should check for plastic degradation. They can become very brittle. You should check cord lengths, and in particular for children under 1.5 years or 18 months, the standard is now 22 centimetres maximum for the length of those cords. Small parts or glued on parts, it's worth noting and remembering that glue can degrade over time, which can make those small parts become a choking hazard. Particularly check things like googly eyes that are stuck on. They are notorious for coming off. We've got here, and I will drop in the chat for you a link. When you're looking at older toys, obviously there is the risk that they have or that they contain lead within the paint that has been used. And this link goes to a private individual called Lead Safe Mama. She conducts her own individual testing on vintage toys, so she's not affiliated with any manufacturer, but this is something she's taken on. So that link takes you through to a lot of the golden oldie Fisher Price toys that some toy libraries still have, including the Happy Apple that you see here. And you'll be pleased to know that that is in fact a safe toy to use. So that's a good starting point. So do use online research to see what you can find out about what research has been done into some of those old toys. Do check for obviously battery compartment corrosion in those older toys. And in terms of the plastics and BPAs, one of the things we've noted as advice is that with cleaning toys regularly, washing them, especially those toys that are mouthed frequently, can help to reduce BPA leaching. And so with a robust cleaning schedule and checking in with members that they are actually cleaning their toys, this should hopefully mitigate some of this risk for your toy library. So talking about repair broadly, and we'll go into some more detail later in the further slides, the big questions to ask are you increasing your risk by repairing the toy? And so we'll also go through some of those risk management strategies as well. What age, so the development age determination, what age is the toy aimed at? So where those toys are aimed at those at under 36 months, so for babies or young children, is it simply not worth the risk associated with repairing that toy? And the toy attributes can lead to some of the hard yeses and the hard no's for repair that we're going to talk about shortly. And then in terms of making those assessments, and we talked about documenting and empowering your volunteers and members to be able to make those decisions. Decision trees are a really effective way of communicating complex and multiple and complex ideas to be able to make that assessment. They can also factor in things such as the cost and ease of replacement toy or parts into your decision making. So is it really worth it for the toy library to repair? And the structure and the material that goes into making up the toy and what you may need to use to actually repair the toy. All right, so here we have a fabulous example of a decision tree for damaged toys. Credit for this goes to Helen Dudley, who developed this for her toy library, and it has been and is still in use. So this one is talking predominantly about, so the first decision is the toy made of plastic? And then that leads into decisions, and you can see the outcomes at the bottom. So there is an outcome where the toy is not suitable for continued use and it should be disposed of, and it says that it should be removed from the system, the toy ID deleted from the toy so it can't be identified, and it should be discarded, unfortunately. The second decision there is that it should be retired and that it may be suitable for rehoming with another family, but no longer for continued use in the toy library. And then the third option there is that it is suitable for repair and it goes off to someone who is capable of making those repairs. This decision tree image was actually posted quite recently in the Facebook discussion group. So if anyone is looking to get a copy to use, head over to there after this and pull that one up, and you'll need to recreate yourself because it is just an image, but it's a great starting point to use within your toy library. And I'm going to hand over to Helen now. You're still muted.
Thank you, Erin. I'm off mute. And we're going to talk about the risk management when considering those repairs. So some of them are clearly just going to be fine, and some of them probably not, or like a hard no, as we would say. So we said toys for babies under 36 months, because when you repair them, the parts could then easily break away. If the parts are too small, then it's a choking hazard. Crib toys, also some baby toys that you get can migrate over to this classification of crib toys. And crib toys, the classification of those is very strict, more so than most toys that Toy Library have in collections. However, non-structural secondary elements, they're okay because if they're for the correct age range. A good example of this one is the nest on the pirate ship or the roof on the dollhouse. So repairing those, reasonably fine. Puzzles and games. Lots of toy libraries replace the counters, the dice, and the jigsaw pieces. The main reason is that many of the puzzles and games are not for children who are under 3, so they're the high risk category. But providing that you still provide the small parts warnings on toys that are for a wide age group, just in case of siblings, or if it is for everyone, then make sure that those small parts warnings are there. Paint and varnish. We can't guarantee the non-toxicity of repainting or revarnishing items. However, if you're going to do it, I would avoid doing it for toys that are for children under 3. Again, because what do children under 3 do? They put everything in their mouth. So if you can't guarantee the toxicity levels of paints and varnishes, then I'd avoid it. Again, managing your risk. Wheels or legs are very important because they are the structural parts of the toy. So we're talking about repairing legs and repairing wheels, and not getting replacement parts from the manufacturer. That's different. So we all know we can get really good wheels from certain suppliers, but repairing the wheel or the legs, because it affects the movement of the toy and could lead to another accident, is probably in the hard no pile. So with every hard yes and a hard no, there's question marks there. So if a toy has electrical components, these are all considerations for when it's not clear. Electrical components, do you know someone who can guarantee that the toy is still going to be in the same condition as it was when it was new after its repair? Taking the risk of electric shock is something that you're going to have to manage on your own, whether who's doing the repair, the level of the repair, how severe it is, and power supply and power accessories. If you're replacing a power accessory, make sure that it's fully compatible with the toy. Also, cords consideration, which Erin has gone into. So a lot of them need to have quick release fixings. The length and the material needs to be evaluated when you're doing your repair. And also your repair materials. So we talked about toxicity in paint and whether the pieces could then break away. Who you're repairing it for, what age they are, and what type of toy it is, what parts it has. Again, can they break away? Are you going to use screws? Are you going to replace a toy that has a spherical screw, and things like that? All things to take into consideration. We'll just touch on 3D printing because I know everybody really wants to hear about it. It would be amazing technology for toy libraries, and it would be a real game changer. But there just isn't the guidelines that we can rely on to help take us in the right direction to get this moving. So we're waiting on some higher power to produce something, because there are 21 different materials that can be used for 3D printing. Each material has a score of these attributes over here, which is flexibility, strength, durability, and heat resistance, just naming a few of them. For replacing a part or a figure, an item from a toy, then you might need to use one or more of these materials in different levels and to get the same consistency condition of the part or of the toy that it was when it was new. So it's quite a complicated process. If you're going to try 3D printing, then consider the part that you're going to replace or the part that you're printing and whether you can reasonably replicate the part exactly the same, like we said. For example, small ball size is especially important. If you were going to recreate a small ball, then you would need to do the necessary testing on the part. And for everyone who's insured with Toy Libraries Australia, we have pledged that our toys meet Australian standards, and that means it being exactly the same condition as when it was new. If you have met with anyone or engaged with anyone who's been printing spare parts for your toy library, we would really love to hear about the experience. Can the providers carry their own liability, and do they provide things like safety certificates or a list of the materials they used, any kind of certification on that? Do they have experience doing that? So a lot more research is required here. I'm looking forward to when things get a little bit more advanced. We're going to talk about responsible toy purchasing because of the standards and because of some insurance considerations that we have, especially if you have insurance with us. Purchasing from a trusted supplier. Toy Libraries Australia runs a website called Toy Community, and it features Australian toy suppliers, and some of them offer wholesale or discounted rates for toy libraries. And we know that those toys have come from within Australia. So the supplier has done the testing that is required and made sure that the toys are meeting the standards. So they've done the work for you already. And if you have insurance with us, then make sure that when you're buying things for your collection, that it fits squarely into definition of the toy. I won't cover insurance too much anymore after that. If you haven't seen it, please go back to the annual 2025 insurance presentation, which covers toy specificity within the program and what we've agreed to with the broker. So purchasing from within Australia and why is it so important? Worldwide online marketplaces like Amazon, they're fantastic for savings, but the products aren't required to be held to the Australian standards. So review the risk if you're buying from a worldwide marketplace. It may look like the same Leapfrog Sunday set, but can you be sure it isn't a copy that hasn't been through the testing that's required to meet the standard? Or are you capable of examining it? Again, it's especially important when buying toys for children under 3 years old because of the high risk. There are a few risk assessment resources available on the knowledge base that you can modify to try and create yourself a risk matrix based around toys or based around anything else within the toy library. Recalls. Even our trusted suppliers have recalls, and it happens when a toy is identified as not meeting Australian standards. Ones that stick out are Erin's great example of the high-powered magnets that were recalled, and they were all over everybody's socials for a while. And one that I remember is the Elephant Butterfly game, and didn't meet the standard on projectile toys. When recalls are in place, it's usually for a toy that's been sold within a certain time period, because once it's been reported, the supplier or the importer is informed, and then the next shipment that's coming in has the changes have been made to make it safe. So it's not always recalled for all time unless there's a total ban, like the magnets that Erin was talking about. The best way to stay ahead of it is to sign up for Product Safety Australia updates, and you can get an email update every time there's a recall. And that's not just on toys, it's on everything, but there are quite a few toys recalled fairly frequently. And getting new spare parts. So if you're buying a new toy and they do have offer spare parts, then manufacturer approved parts are way better than anything that you could dream up or try and make on the fly. A lot of our active toy suppliers can provide replacement feet and wheels, those parts that become worn very quickly. And even some approved parts are interchangeable, like micro scooters and the Glover scooters. Their parts actually, even though they're a different brand, they actually can fit each other. Unfortunately, not all of our suppliers have come to the table on spare parts. If you are looking for a spare part and you're having issues, go to the supplier, then perhaps try the manufacturer, and always reach out to Toy Community Admin, that's me, for support trying to get these spare parts for your toy library. I'll hand you back to Erin for some review of these broken toys, eh?
Thanks, Helen. Let's get a little bit of participation from everyone. Bit of a brain break partway through. What do you think about this poor London bus? Is it repairable or not? Feel free to pop it in the chat or come off mute. Yeah, lots of knots. Absolutely. Well done. Yes, unfortunately, this one was treated like a roller skate whilst it was bath time for someone else. So no, into the bin that one goes, but do save those spare parts. I'm sure lots of toy libraries have multiples of this one. So the MDF there, you could never be sure of what glue you were using to repair it. The safety and toxicity of that and the strength of it, it's just not going to hold up. All right, what's the next one we've got? Okay, what about this one? This one is a wooden rocking climber. They call it a wooden rocker boat. And you can see they're one of the slats. We've got lots of no's in the chat. So one of the slats has come apart at the join. So not repairable. No, 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 no. Oh, okay. Let's have a look. In actual fact, yes. So this one was repaired and was safely repaired because it had been purchased from an Australian manufacturer and the supplier was Australian. So the Toy Library reached out to see if they had any replacement parts. They were able to supply just that internal slat at the cost of postage. The whole toy had to be disassembled, it was all screwed together, so that was fine. And so it was replaced, but the toy itself is considered repaired because that slat you had to disassemble the toy. So because the whole toy had to be disassembled, it was a genuine part that was used, but it continues to meet the standards and the manufacturer warrants the part that they've replaced like they do the rest of the toy. So the varnish used matches the existing toy, and we know that this will have met the toy safety requirements because it has come from the manufacturer. Other people in our earlier session today suggested that you could maybe brace that part or talk to a men's shed or a chippy to get a replacement part made. And the risks around that are that, again, you don't know what the strength of the piece of wood is that they have used. You don't know the specifications. And if they do varnish it, again, you don't know exactly what they've used. So that would not be a fixable, necessarily a safe fix to go down that path. But yes, this one was able to be repaired. All right. This sad looking and much loved walker, repairable? No, no. Yes, we're getting lots of no's through. Yep, busted. Correct. Love it. Yeah, absolutely. So because this is a structural part of the toy, it is plastic, so it does create sharp edges. And whilst it may look like you can get a fairly neat glue on there because it's that structural safety part of the toy that the child holds onto, it wouldn't be considered safe to repair. But you know, you can recycle that toy. So check with your local council or Big W if they have a recycling program in place. All right, I'm going to hand back to Helen. That's our bit of fun. Brain break.
Thanks, Erin. So where do all these crazy rules come from? All these cord lengths, things like that. They come from the Australian toy standards, and the code for the standards is right there on the slide. As we've said, if you're insured with us, then we've pledged that the toys that we have in collections meet these standards. And this is just a summary of the sections that are most relevant to toy libraries. So the standards have actually been created for people who make, sell, or manufacture toys in any way. Toy libraries operations are a little bit different. So these are the sections that are most relevant to you guys, and you should broadly keep them in mind when you're assessing. But it's leading us to a tool that will simplify how you identify and assess toys against the standards. The safety aspects of mechanical properties affect the entire toy and its components. It covers everything from the spherical ends of screws within toys, specifics of cord and string safety, including push and pull toys, aquatic toys, and flammable materials like costumes. That's just a few of the items within those sections. And of course, it covers all toys for children aged under 36 months. What about testing? So there are major testing centres for these standards within Australia, but again, they're kind of leaning on the manufacturer and could be very costly for toy libraries to use. But there are some really simple resources available as part of the guide that Toy Libraries Australia have provided, including the choke check or the small parts template and info sheet. And that comes from the ACCC. And it's in the knowledge base under Quality Standard 4.3, keeping your toys clean and safe. There are other standards associated with toy library collections. They're quite uncommon, but worth being aware of. The crib toys that we've mentioned, they lie quite closely to some baby toys that could be in toy libraries. Toys with electrical functions, particularly containing LEDs, they have to meet their own specific set of standards. So be cautious when purchasing toys from unknown sources, as we've talked about, as they might pose a risk if they contain an LED and they come from somewhere that's not been verified. Most of this shouldn't be a concern if it's a new toy and it came from an Australian supplier, because they've carried the risk for you. So because the standards is that hundreds of pages document, the ACCC has created really helpful combinations of the sections of the standard concerning toys and made them mandatory and non-mandatory standards. Batteries, we have covered significantly already. So if you can avoid having button batteries, it's best, but if you cannot avoid it, check the compartment. Spare batteries are in the correct packaging and kept out of reach, and provide the warnings on the toy as well as the bag or the box where reasonably possible. There's a standard on projectiles, which is non-mandatory, and they should be in a condition that meet the standards. Any deterioration of the tip of the projectile, and that should be disposed of. You can consider warnings, but as I said, it's not a mandatory standard. The warning might be to do not aim at eyes or face. And banned products. This is updated frequently, and there's a rise in the use of sensory or fidget toys. And a lot of these sensory or fidget toys from certain sites or areas or bought from places did not meet the Australian standards, and it wasn't just button batteries. It's also elastic cord capable of extending at least 500 mils, and that was a strangulation risk. So a lot of recalls are for these banned products. So if you've got those signed up to the updates from the ACCC, then you should hear all of that exciting toy news. We've talked about the difference between magnets and high-powered magnets, because magnets do exist in toys, but the difference between them being banned is their flux index and also whether they can be separated from the toy. Replica guns, I think, are not a real big problem for toy libraries, but they are part of the ban. So when you need to go and find the resources, whether you questions about a toy, you've got concerns, you've got issues with the toy, this is everything that you need to consider when you're looking for the standards. So you might need to look at multiple parts of this. Its age determination, its category, where it's come from, and then and then any accessories or properties to it, and then go and look for your resources. Would it be the mandatory standard for button batteries? Is it the under 36 months? Is it flammable toys? As we said, it's a lot of information. So shortly, we'll show you what we've created. So we put all of the information that we've got from the standards and from websites and from really great resources from the Australian Toy Association. And we put it into a tool that hopefully all of our members can use. But first, let's look at whether you guys can identify which resources, which standards, what concerns have you got with these three. They're not all different. They're not all three different ones. So tell me, what do you think are your concerns out of the list for all three of them? Mechanical properties, button batteries, what's it going to be? Would anybody venture a guess? Yeah, cord. So for this one, pinch, button battery, good. So for this one, primarily we're looking at the cord length, which is part of the mechanical and physical properties of the toy. Not cord length, but the quick release of toys to be worn around the neck. Yes, we're looking at the pinch points on the pushchair, and we're looking at the jaw entrapment. All of those are safety aspects related to mechanical and physical properties. Let's look at one more. This could be more than one. Okay, that's an interesting one. Cord, button batteries, yeah. So there's more than one here. There's mechanical and physical properties, especially with this one here. If in the example that you might want to repair it, if you can't ensure that that ball will stay on there, then it's not going to meet the standard because it doesn't have structural integrity. With the buttons, that if depending on what age determination you're going to provide it to, would because we know the buttons come away from the buttons could or will come away from the main toy, then does it pass the small parts check? What warnings does it need? What age do you need to give it to? And this fella here is yes, the hidden button batteries. And we got this one from the incredibly helpful Facebook group post, and which just goes to show when we collaborate and we connect together how much we can share our knowledge. Well done, everyone. So let's take a quick look. I think this is going to auto play and there's no sound. This is our child safety play advisor. So we're going to ask you where you come from so that we know that our members, so we know who's using the resources basically. Little disclaimer from her there. So I'm going to ask her about some toy safety and then she's hopefully going to give me the answer. So she's given a little bit of the answer there, and then we're going to ask for some more information. This tool is still pending release, so we just want to make sure that she's going to give really accurate responses. We're going to give her a bit of a testing phase, but launch should not be very long. If you're watching the recording, she's probably launched already. Hello, Toy Libraries of the Future. So she's giving me some of the poison standards that go with the paint information that I asked for. And then we're throwing a curveball in there about jumping castles, and she's going to check with me whether I've got insurance with Toy Libraries Australia. So that's that. Before we stop the recording, or if you're watching this later, don't forget to do your post-work questions on the learning platform for this activity. This is a new method of getting your much valued feedback on learning provided by Toy Libraries Australia. Thank you, everyone. I will now stop the recording.